I'm in that full circle now because I did the video back home on my marae, Tamapahore, and I got all my nephews and nieces involved because they're the next generation. I'm on the outside looking back in, they're on the inside looking out, and they're like, why would you want to come back home? I was like, why wouldn't I? I was like, I've done everything that I've done, all to come back home to show that if I can do it, you can do it.
In 2009, Stan Walker became a trans-Tasman superstar when he won the Australian Idol competition. But now Stan Walker is focusing on his culture, identity and his roots in Tauranga Moana to give hope to his whānau, hapu and iwi. But what price might this new mission come to bear? Today, it's the international music icon on Indigenous 100.
Stan Walker, tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe.
No mai ki tēnei kaupapa. Welcome to Indigenous 100. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's awesome to have you, bro. It's awesome to have you. Hey, tuatai, no hea koe?
Tauranga Moana and Ruatoki.
Ruatoki.
Yeah.
Because you're Tūhoe?
Tūhoe and Ngāti
Ranginui, ka pai.
But everything, actually. Everything.
I'm sure there's some ngāpuhi in there too. Oh yeah, they'll all be moaning about that one. That's what I always say to Rio. Oh, but you're Pangāpuhi. No, I'm not, Julian. I'll just say it anyway. Eh? Hey, no, awesome to have you. So let's not start at the beginning, but let's talk about a couple of things and see how we go, right? You're like properly famous. Like, you know, even Pākehās know who you are. You're not like, you know, all the nannies at the pā know you're famous. You're like really famous. So what is that like for you?
Oh, it's an interesting question. I feel like there's a lot to say about that. I love what I do. I think a lot of the stuff that comes with it, I don't particularly love. I think fame for me is just it's a lot of sacrifice. It's like no sleep. It's no privacy. Everything you are and everything you do now becomes everybody else's problem or somebody else's, like you're at the, people are just ready to pounce on anything that you do, anything you say, what you post up, you know. I'm just kind of on watch 24/7. So that part of it I kind of hate, if I'm being honest. I wish, like, you know, in a perfect world, I could sing, I could act, I could tell my stories and do what I do and, you know, do stuff for our people, but not have the
other stuff.
The other stuff. I'm actually quite like even though I'm an extrovert, I'm the ultimate introvert.
So I don't quite get that. Tell me what that means. What do you mean when you say that?
When I'm on stage, I'm out there to, like, here I am. I know my job, I know my role, I know my purpose, I know my power, I know my platform, and I give everything in that moment.
Yeah.
In crowds, I get anxious. I don't like being stared at. I don't like being touched. Like, I find it hard. Like, I'm shy when I meet people. Like, if it's in a setting of people coming to my whare or coming into my space, well, then obviously, kia ora, you know, do you want a kaputi? Like, all these things, like, you know, what we learn growing up on the marae and at home. But going into somebody else's thing, I'll say to my bros, you go first. Like, I'm like, oh, kia ora. I'm like, I don't know, it's a weird thing. Like, I know how to turn on Stan Walker, but most of the time, I'm just roto. I'm roto at home, I'm the one in the corner. Like, if I'm going out with my mates, I'll hide in the corner and just have a drink or whatever. Yeah, I love living my purpose. I love being on stage. I love being able to be a voice for people who don't have a voice. I love representing Māori. I love being Indigenous. I love being in spaces and sitting at tables that someone like me would never ever had the chance, but now I'm sitting there. I like being on the other side and I love doing what I do for our people, for people, and to inspire people and to change people's mindsets. I love learning. but it's just the other stuff I still struggle with. And it's been like 12 years I've been doing this, and yet I still kind of struggle with that, just that I'm everybody's. That my dream now, back when I was, when I first started and when I was a kid growing up, all I had was dream. Just my dreams. I didn't have anything else, and dreams are free, and I used to have crazy dreams, and I never thought it would become a reality. But having my dreams, it was just mine. Nobody could touch it, nobody could tell me how to do it, nobody could say, nah, you're not going to get there. Like, that was just me. Me on my hill, my dreams. And now it's everybody's to say, I don't like that. Can we change that? That's not good enough. So I think, having to share my whole life with people, even though I love to share stories so that people can learn or what it can take whatever they want from my story and it can help them. I love that. It's just that that constant access that people think they have with me, in every way, informal, formal, professional, not professional, on the streets, out in the mall or anything like that. I still struggle with it. It's like I love people, but also I'm like afraid of people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. There's two elements there that I want to pick up on. So let's pick up on the first one, which is around, so is there a different way that you can do this without having to do it the way you're doing it now? Is there a way that you can, continue to be quote unquote Stan Walker? And it sounds like there's almost two Stan Walkers here, right? There's Stan Walker that we know and see and love and hear and all that kind of thing. And then there's the you part. And I remember you talking about being in Tauranga Moana and looking at the beach. That's a different Stan Walker to the Stan Walker we know. So is there a different way that you can do this without having to do it the same way you're doing it now, or not?
Every day I'm finding new ways to do things. I feel like I'm constantly changing too. So I don't like doing stuff that I'm not passionate about. I find it actually really hard to do something. Just say I got all this money to do this thing, but it just doesn't make me happy. I'm not passionate about it and doesn't align with my purpose or where I'm heading. Okay. So I'm changing in that aspect, and I'm growing. So I'm learning when to. This is what I want to do, this is what I'm not going to do, this is who I want to work with, this is not who I'm going to work with. So I feel like I'm stepping into a different space and into a different season, to be honest, in my life, where I'm very I've always been matter of fact, but I don't think my actions have been matter of fact, if that makes sense. I know exactly what I want, and I don't mince my words. If I'm wrong on something, or if I believe in something, I just say it how it is. But I think just I haven't been able to action it, or how you think something or want to say something, but you don't walk it yet. It's talking the walk the talk.
Why not? Why don't you think you can do that? Is that because of this, I don't know, I guess this persona, or however you want to put it, about this Stan Walker that people know, is about trying to live up to that for a long time?
I think a bit of that, also a bit of just, I think a fear too, of actually stepping out and being all right with not being the favourite person, or not having favour in my workplace, or missing an opportunity, or okay, this is that much money that will set me up for this. Is actually, I've come to a point, it's I'd rather be happy than be rich and be the most saddest person in New Zealand. So I'm and I've been there. I've been there many times. I've been on the screen and on camera and on Instagram and Facebook, social media. I've been the most happiest person that looks like I've got everything in life, but inside I hate everything.
Do you feel, it almost sounds like you feel morally kind of, not corrupted, but morally kind of, ethically kind of...
Conflicted.
Conflicted, and living a life which isn't actually your life.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like, it's interesting you use the word seasonal, because you're almost, I guess, implying to me that things have changed.
Oh, yeah.
And you're living a kind of new life now. And you're not worried about what the impacts of that will be on the quote-unquote Stan Walker that we know. Yeah. So how did you get to that point?
Lockdown. I was exposed to myself in a way that I've never been exposed to myself. I had to literally be still and be, though for the first time since I became Stan Walker to the world. And it was hard because I had to look at so many different things in my life that I haven't dealt with, you know, the past trauma, old habits, like my whānau dynamic, relationships, where I was at with my career, like who am I, remembering who am I, and my purpose. I was just like, okay, so is this, and everything that was in my life, was it aligning with my purpose? And I was having the most out of it, but incredible, deep conversations. I had lockdown in Auckland with my best mate and all his whānau, and we were in a little whare, and like, you know, it was cluttered as hell, but it was like the best house that I could have been in with the best whānau. First of all, I bloomin' had home-cooked meals every night. I haven't had that for years. I didn't remember the last time. And just having these conversations, I remember I walked into the room and every day it would be something different, but something real deep. And I said to him, I was like, bro, do you think that you love your whānau unconditionally? Or do you think it's conditional? I don't even know where I got this from, but I thought, is my love, or me and my whānau, do we have that unconditional love, or is it conditional? I'm just going to love you when you're on, but if you stuff up and you're out partying, or if you've fallen off the track, I'm just going to be like, oh, did you see what you do? And not actually love you unconditionally and go, okay, I don't like what you're doing, but you're all good, I got your back. Or am I going to sit there and just go, yep, who's you been doing this? Well, what an idiot. I was like, okay, so... Like, I was just thinking this stuff, and I was like, okay, how do I love people? How am I to people? And then, so this was just a process of being exposed to myself, and then it just kind of changed everything of like where I was heading. No, it wouldn't, actually, no, sorry. It didn't change everything of where I was heading. It was where I was at now, because it was going to stop me from living my purpose into where I should be heading. And I had kind of gone off the track a bit, just because of situations, circumstances in my life that I let get to me. I'm quite an emotional person. I feel like I'm bipolar. I probably am. Well, my life is bipolar, and like the situations that I go through are not normal, you know, to everybody else. And I'm not saying that my hardships or my trials and tribulations are harder than anybody else's, because somebody's hardship is somebody's hardship. Like somebody, they were like, oh, I couldn't get this thing for the week, or struggling to get groceries, or, you know, it could be small or big to me, but that's their hardship. But I go through things and I'm in the public eye. So I can't be snapping at somebody when they keep annoying me if they want a photo and my nan's just died. They don't care. For me, it's the millionth time meeting somebody, but it's the first time they've met me. Sometimes I struggle, but I have to get out of my head and, you know, like give people, but I give people who give respect, everything, anything. It's a weird thing because people don't know how to say hello. They don't look at you in the eye. People just grab you and they're, oh, can I get a photo? I was like, oh, kia ora, I'm Stan. Nice to meet you. And they're like, oh, hi, I'm blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, yeah, nice to meet you. Try and have a conversation with them. And it actually stops them in their track. So, yeah, I've just learned so much in this lockdown of just being exposed to myself and dealing with stuff, and I've really enjoyed it, and also like it was hard.
It sounds like a revelation, which comes to the second element that you were talking about that I picked up on earlier, which is around, so who is Stan Walker? Describe, and I'm talking about roto,
Yeah.
So who is Stan Walker?
I'm a lot of things. I think ultimately I'm for my whānau. I'm for our people. And I think that goes across both Stan Walker and roto. But I'm just, I don't know,
Yeah, I guess one, Stan Walker, is a means to an end.
Yeah.
Right, which is Stan Walker, roto.
Yeah.
So what is the end? Well, you know, you talked about mission. What is the mission?
The mission. Whew, that's a big one. I think for me is to be, I'm in a stage now, or in a season now, and I think becoming of age, like I'm turning 30, not that it's about age, but I feel like just in my life, I'm becoming of age, is that the right wording? In my life, that I was like, what am I doing to make sure to leave my legacy? What legacy am I leaving for my kids, for my kids' kids, for people, for the next generation? I was like, okay, I'm done now. Like, I've lived everything that I've done all the fun stuff. I was like, what do I do now to leave a legacy? And I was just like, man, I want to see the next generation like empowered and passionate and live outrageously, like dream outrageously. I want them, because I look at my parents and I look at my nannies and my koros and the ones before them, like, my great-grandparents, they were in the wars. They fought wars. They literally fought and died so that we could live. Then our grandparents had to fight for our reo so that we could speak. Our parents had to fight in a different way, and we're fighting in a different way, but I don't want my kids to ever have to fight the fight that we fought, or that we're fighting, and that my parents fought. And I want to leave a legacy that, I don't want them to feel like that they're privileged, like, okay, we got money, we can do this. I want them to work hard for everything. I want them to have respect. But I want them to know that they can be anybody and do anything. If they want to walk on the moon, well, then make that happen. Anything's happened. Because for me, walking on the moon was becoming the singer that I am today. Walking on the moon was doing films. Walking on the moon was meeting Beyoncé. Walking on the moon, for me, was everything that I've been doing for the last 12 years. I remember being a little Māori kid, a little barefoot, bruised up, scratched up, paru as, like, probably didn't have a shower for a couple of days, standing on the top of my mauna, Manatawa, looking out to the ocean, Tauranga Moana, looking to Mauao, and singing and pretending I'm singing to thousands of people. Wow. I'm living that dream. So my end goal and my thing is to see our people, our generation now, my parents still, that you can be still anything. I want them to be set free of the generational cycles, of the generational trauma, like even to a point like colonization, like I want them to be set free and empowered and to know that they are incredible, that they were born for such a time as this, that everybody was born for purpose, to have purpose, to live with purpose, that they can dream outrageously, live passionately, to love more, to forgive more. Like, I don't want to hand down any of my past trauma. I want to stop it at my generation. I want to stop it at me. I'm so glad that I have incredible parents that stopped at them. And I'm having, and stuff is stopping at me, that my kids are never going to experience that. That the next generation, that all our kids, when I say my kids, I'm talking about the next generation. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to see our people empowered to know that, man, they have a place in this world, and it's an important place in this world, that nobody can be, like, I can't be you, you can't be me. And it's amazing. Be the best you. Like, I just look at, like, I just finished doing songs, my latest single. Here we go, promo. It's called Bigger.
Nah. We're going to get there eventually anyway, bro.
But for me, I'm in that full circle now. Yeah. And I'm only turning 30. I'm in that full circle now because I did the video back home on my marae, Tamapahore. And I got all my nephews and nieces involved because they're the next generation. I'm on the outside looking back in, they're on the inside looking out, and they're like, why would you want to come back home? I was like, why wouldn't I? I was like, I've done everything that I've done, all to come back home to show that if I can do it, you can do it. I remember we were shooting the first scene, and it was emotional for me. Like, even when I think about it now, I was on the steps of the marae, and I was like, started to sing the song, and I looked back at the hill, at the same hill that I used to sing on as a little kid. That little kid that was told that I was going to amount to nothing, I was going to be nothing. That little kid that saw the surroundings, okay, yeah, I'll be a druggie, I'll be an abuser, I'll be an alcoholic, I'll probably have kids at 15. That same kid that was told at school that, like, oh, you think you're going to be a singer, you're going to be this. Same kid who used to get hidings every day. Same kid who was abused in every kind of way. The same kid that was told I was, like, literally everything. Like, I was going to be that same statistic. I probably would have, to be honest, killed myself at a young age because of the stuff that has happened. But I looked at that hill and I was like, now that kid is this big does this adult living those dreams that were
almost unattainable.
Yeah. Those dreams of walking on the moon, that was walking on the moon, and now I'm on the moon looking back, and then I see my nephew who's the same age as me, and I'm like, far out. I wish I had a me at my age when I was little me. And now I get to be that for my nephews and nieces, because they can see that. They know that I'm from there. They know that I'm roto when I come home. I'm just uncle. I'm wearing the same gumboots. I'm staying at Nan's house on the couch. I walk in and if there's a pot on, I'm sitting in the rugged place. They're like, how far, cuz, or uncle, I can't believe you're going to come back here. Why are you here? And I was like, why wouldn't I be? Yeah. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Yeah. So that's like, it's this full circle thing. And I'm like, that's my end goal, is that they will be better than me. Yeah. That the next generation will be so much more talented, so much more onto it, educated, so much more set free and what is woke. I want them to stand for injustice. Like, I want them to stand up against injustice. I love all these marches and everything, all the different kaupapa that we didn't want to happen, but it's happening, that they're standing for, for something. And not just being like, oh no, I just can't do it, I'll just stay home. Man, I was that. I remember my dream at 14 was to literally sell dope and get my girlfriend pregnant and stay home. That was my dream at that time, because I thought it was over, because I started becoming my surroundings and, that thing, monkey see, monkey do. But thank God that my mum and dad took us out of that situation, moved to Australia.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that point, because I think that had I guess there's a thing called the serendipity of longitude. There are flukes of life that happen that enable change, right? But innately, though, I get the sense that you had a confidence anyway that you could do certain things, but your surroundings were kind of enclaving you, becoming barriers to get to your aspiration and dream. So a couple of things there. Number one, I mean, you, all the way through that time in your life, and you talk about the trauma, and you've mentioned that, you still innately knew you had a talent. Yeah. Right? And then, as you say, your mum and dad took you guys over to Australia. So the first thing to come back to is the innate talent thing. How did you know, what kept driving you? And throughout those kind of tumultuous times, what kept driving you? What was the kind of inner soul food that kept kind of spurring that dream, so that everything that was happening in your life was happening, but you still kept going? Because that's an important lesson part that we also need to kind of imbue in our kids, right? Yeah. So what was the innate thing that kept you going to aspire to achieve that kind of dream?
I think it's a few things. I think because singing was my hiding place. It was my safe space. It was my joy. It was my outlet, and it was it was the best thing that I was best at.
And you knew you could sing, right? You knew
I could sing.
Yeah. And were people telling you?
Right. People would tell me, but I was still conflicted, still shame. I don't want to sing in front of people. But there was something in me, the other person in me was like, hurry up and do it so people can hear you. Do it, you might get an opportunity. But I was like, shame, or, I don't want to stand out, or I might get mocked for singing, or...
And I'm glad you mentioned that again, because this is a very Māori thing that we talk about the whole time, right?
Yes.
And Po Te Mara had this great quote about patua te taniwha, we need to slay the beast, slay the dragon, right? Yes. So how do we do that? Because you're someone that's lived it, done it, and yet it still happens. Yeah. There's so many of our kids that are talented and do not want to stand out, right? And so how do we do that?
I reckon for me, it's speaking. I think growing up, I think we've heard more death spoken over us, or bad stuff spoken over us. We're like, our humour is like, if you put it on paper, it's quite dark and sad. Like, we've got nicknames for all of our cousins, and like, it's funny to us, and like, that's how we, I don't know, deal with stuff or get through stuff, or that's just how you just were brought up.
It's crossing the line, right?
It's fully crossing the line. I'm like, oh my gosh. I go, we would have a march for every different name that we have. There would be a protest against the names that we have for each other. But my dad, he's taught me so many things, but the greatest thing he's taught me, and I used to think he's a weirdo anyway, my dad. My whole family are all weirdos. We're not normal, we're not a normal whānau. But he, every morning he looks in the mirror and he talks to himself, goes, Ross, you're the man, Ross. He goes, you're the best dad. Money comes to you, Ross. He goes, you're a good husband, Ross. And I was like, what do you do? He goes, I speak that. And everything he speaks over his life, he is. If I'm speaking like, you little pussy or you little thing, like what we've, as normal words for us, shut up, stop crying, then you become that. You become all these things. You become whakamā, and then you don't even know you are. You think that you're all these things. It's like, I think where it starts is speaking life over yourself. See, a lot of our people, unfortunately, and a lot of Aotearoa struggle with confidence, and they think that being confident is not being humble. They think that shame is being humble. Like, oh, you need to humble yourself. I was like, so tell me how I humble myself. They're like, oh, don't be too thing. I was like, so don't be awesome.
And so you still get this now? Do people?
Oh, all the time.
Really?
Like people.
Not your whānau, but there'll be others who say, bro.
Other people. Like people, it's a sad thing because I get a lot of people will come up to me, they're like, oh, hey bro, nice to meet you. Like, I'm not a fan of your music, but I like you. You're awesome. Or like, oh, don't like, they'll just say something to, like, because it's their own fear, it's their own insecurities that they have to bring me down to the level. I was like, bro, literally I was in the corner, not talking or looking at you or not trying to go, kia ora, I'm Stan Walker. So it's a problem here. Their tall poppy syndrome is a problem here throughout, especially within Māori Pacifica. It's the worst. It's like, don't be awesome. Don't stand out. Don't try. Because, and we've been taught that it's like you're shame to try, shame to stand up, shame to stand out, shame to be awesome, shame to fail. You just lose. It's a lose-lose. Now it's taken me years to build confidence and to know my worth and know my value. So when people go, oh, you think you're good? I was like, yeah, I'm the man. And they struggle with it. Like, you need to be humble. I was like, so me saying knowing my worth is not being humble. Like, I struggle with that, but I tell people, I was like, know your worth. Know that you're amazing.
So how did you get to there? Because this is awesome. This is getting to where I kind of wanted to go around, and this is a really important lesson, and if we can teach this lesson, this is going to be great, right? So how do we get to there? How do you get to the know your worth part? Yeah. We all don't have to be as good as Stan Walker at what you do, but how do we get to know our worth and know that we know what that worth is, the true value of that worth to ourselves? How do we do that?
I don't know. Like, I feel like
how did you do it?
For me, I've had people in my life who spoke life over me. First time that happened was in Australia. He was my youth pastor. I wasn't allowed to do anything because I was a naughty kid, so I just say, well, only place I was allowed to go to was youth group and go to church with my mum and dad. And I hated it, but I found this youth group and these young people that were like me, and I thought they were cool, but they were like, I was allowed to go and hang with them because I wasn't allowed to hang with my league mates, my school mates. I wasn't allowed to have sleepovers. I wasn't allowed to go to parties. I wasn't allowed to know where I was grounded most of my life. Straight up. And I met these guys, and I remember I quit school. I dropped out of school when I was 16. It just wasn't for me. I was getting nothing out of it, so I was either stay at school and I wasn't happy or go to work. So I got a full-time job at this Mellam's 5-star supermarket in the whole of Australia. And anyway, I was going to youth group, and I would hitch to youth because my mum like, can't be bothered taking you up. So I would hitch, like in Byron Bay where we lived, hitching is a normal thing. I wouldn't recommend it anywhere else, but it was normal there. So I'd hitch an hour up to the coast. But sometimes these fellas would come down, drive down after work, and I'd be walking out of work, and they'd be there. I'm like, what are you doing here? They're like, oh, we just come to hang, bro. I was like, we just thought we'd just take you out for a feed. I'm like, hey, he's a trippy. I never ever had somebody go out their way, and they would speak life over me. Like, ba, te roto, you're the man, bro. I was like, you can do this. I've never had that before. I've had it maybe a couple of times in my life, but this new, like, somebody speaking life and doing life with me and telling me what I needed to hear rather than what I wanted to hear. And it just, and that kind of happened, and I would get those kind of people in my life, and it showed me as like, this is the kind of people I want in my life. And unfortunately, even if you're my whānau, but if you're negative and you're speaking that stuff to bring me down to your level because that's how you feel, well, then I've got to disconnect from you. And I'm still learning to do that because I'm a softie for when it comes to my whānau. Some of them, I need to get there. They don't get. But, you know, like, I'm strong enough to know, I know my worth. Now it's just like, just have to flip the script. I'm like, bro, stop talking like that. I was like, you're awesome, and you can catch them off guard, and they're like, oh. So I think it starts with just like having the right people to speak over you, or starting with yourself. But sometimes if you can't do that, if you can't see that in your own self, like, it's just having, you know, I feel like we're getting a new generation of leaders, and it's a normal thing, especially for men, for Māori men, to say I love you, to say you're amazing, you're beautiful, brother. We never heard that as kids. If you ever said I love you in front of anybody, your cousins, oh, shut up, bro. You didn't say that.
That's true.
And now it's a normal thing. Yeah. Like me and my boys, I'm like, chill, my brother, love you, brother, you're beautiful, have a beautiful day, brother. That language didn't exist as a kid for me. So now it's just like, I feel like there's a new wave and a new generation of people coming forward and speaking life over each other.
And you've noticed that now more since you've been back. Because, it's right, like, we don't want all of our kids to be uplifting and going to Australia like you and your whānau, right? We need to be able to do that within Aotearoa, within our own communities, with our own whānau now. And so you think we're ready for that now?
We are ready. We're ready, and people are ready. Like, I remember, because I still got, you know, there's the cousins who are still like that, but I know it because I keep doing it, and it frustrates them. It frustrates them, like, even so, for example, my best mate, my bestest mate in the world, he was the same, oh, shut up, bro. Yeah. And I always just say, oh, chew my break, love you, brother. He go, oh yeah, chew.
Oh, chew.
All the time. Yeah. For me, it was a normal thing because I learned it from my Aussie mates. Yeah. Just to be open, like, why not? Yeah. Just tell you, I love them, so tell them. And one day he said to me, this is like a couple of years later, he goes, you know what, G, I just got to say something. He goes, you know, bro, you used to always just piss me off when you say, like, I love you. And Father, that frustrated me. And I'm like, what are you saying that for? He goes, bro, now I understand, bro. I've never ever think. He goes, you know what, bro? I love you too, brother. Years of just being told to be hard. And so I feel like now we're ready to do that. Like, I make sure that when I go into a space, I'm like, I love you. Like, I'm just out there, and I see my cousins, and now, like, my same cousins, even who are gang members, are willing to take off their patches to come to my show, support me, and then we're having a quarter, and goes, you know, I love you too, my cuz. You know, it's gangsters, or, yo, I love you too, my cousin. I love you. Like, that dialogue did not exist when we were kids, and now it's coming in there. And if it can happen to my best mate and my cousins, even to my uncles, I'm like, Jay, love you, uncle. And they're like, oh yeah, love you, Nif, love you, Nif. But it's like, it's happening. Yeah. And we're the generation to change that. Now is the time. Because our kids are going to know nothing. The next generation are going to go nothing about that hard, like, oh, don't cry. And I still have tendencies when I see my nephews and nieces or see things, you got to stop doing that. What are you crying for? I'm like, no, that was us. That's not them. Are you all right? Instead of, shush, stop crying. I was like, are you all right? What's the matter? Kōrero, like, you know, like having a conversation. We never got talked to as kids. We never got explained. We didn't even get shown how to, we never got the sex talk. We never got educational talk about that, how to be safe. We never got the alcohol talk. We never got the drug talk. We never got any talk. You just had to just get by and don't do that. It's like, you better not do that, you'll get a hiding. We never got talked about it. We never got taught how to do things. We never got taught how to drink. Okay, we go out, we can have a drink. We got shown to just drink to get wasted until you can't breathe. We got shown, go and sell drugs, go and do this. We got shown this is how you like, I don't know, get a girl or like root somebody. Yes, root is an ugly word, but that's it. We got shown to root. We got shown to beat up people. We got shown to, if you're hurting and if you're depressed, shut your mouth, don't say anything. We never got taught and we never got talked to. Now we're talking. Like, I have these conversations with my mum and dad. I remember my sister, she's the only girl in our whānau. She's 19. There's 4 boys and she's our baby. When she was growing up, she was always with me a lot. We just were so overprotective that we never listened to her. We never talked to her. We were just, don't you dare, like so overprotective, like it hurt us that she was growing up and she was turning into a woman. So we would just be like angry like my mum and dad, how they were to us. And I remember I was like, we're going to lose my sister and she's going to do something dumb because she never was taught how to do it. So she's going to do it in the dark and do it in secret. And she will never call us for help if anything goes wrong. If she got raped or she got drugged or something, you know, this is like the things that are happening these days and it's been happening a lot. And I was just like, she's not going to call us because she don't trust us. So I started talking to her like this rather than talking down at her and telling her, because you never, when you're talking down like that, you're just telling, you're not actually conversating and learning and connecting. And we're just a byproduct of our parents. They didn't know how to do it, their parents didn't know how to do it, we didn't know, but I'm like, nah, I'm seeing a pattern and I don't want that to happen because that happened to me and I did everything in the dark and I got caught in situations that, and I could never turn to my family. And so now, like just talking to my sister, I'm like, far out, how are you feeling? Like, how are you doing? Are you all right? Now my sister will come to me straight away. And I've had to teach my mum and dad how to talk to their daughter. My mum doesn't even know how to have girls. She's had boys. She was the lead coach. She played rugby. She taught us how to play rugby. She said to me one day, she goes, oh, geez, your sister, she just wants to talk about stuff. And I'm like, I don't even know how to talk about that stuff. She goes, geez, I don't even like her. She's like being emotional. And I'm like, mummy, man, you can't do that. But now, like, they're so tight. They talk about everything. But like, it's, that generational thing, but like, it's like we're getting better as we go on. And I don't want our kids to ever be like that. I don't want them to, like, for us, it was like, we're so outrageous and talked outrageous, like, oh, you fat thing. And look at you skinny little rat. But it's like, fuck, that's actually so hurtful. So if I ever heard my nephews like I remember my nephew said to me, goes, oh, uncle, you're so skinny. And I was just like, boy, if I said, oh, boy, you're so fat, how would you feel? He goes, oh, that's not nice. I go, you never comment on somebody's appearance or how big or skinny they are, what color they are. Don't ever say that. That's ugly, boy. You wouldn't like that said about you. And they're like, oh, but we never got taught that. Yeah. But now it's we have everything at our fingertips. We have all the information, so we can't be ignorant in today's day and age. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I still don't know, but it's like, man, we need to be better so that they're better.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do, to unlearn that behaviour, right? And it takes time, and that's why people, I think, get really frustrated by it, because it's not easy, right? And the soft stuff is the hard stuff. Yeah. Soft's not the right word, but you understand what I mean, right? That stuff is the hard stuff. Vulnerable stuff's the hard stuff. And so to try and unlearn that kind of ingrained behaviour, for whatever reason, whether it's family or community or, marae or whatever it might be, to unlearn that stuff is really tough. But I understand now what your mission is, because you've kind of been in a position to be able to have a greater effect simply because of, I don't want to put it this way, but the waho. Yeah. You understand what I mean? Like, they see someone who is them, who is of them, who has done really well, quote unquote, really well, successfully, commercially, and is saying these messages. It does help. But I wonder if you're feeling that that's what's happening, i.e. that people are kind of responding now because of what you've been able to do in this life, in the Stan Walker Waho life, where the purpose that you're undertaking now is actually having an effect. And people are saying that to you now. They're saying, oh, I get it. And they're starting to make their way there. But it's not easy, right? Yeah. So how much of that do you take on? Because, you still got to do what you have to do. And I know that's not where you prefer to be most of the time, but how much of that role do you think you have to play? How much of that role do you have to advocate so that you can continue to have that change? Because, as I say, it's a long churn. It's a hard churn.
I think because no matter how I'm feeling, how I like down, I'm out. And no matter what season I'm going through, my purpose still remains. My people are my purpose.
Yeah.
So when I feel like, I don't want to do this, I look at those kids. I look at my nephews and nieces. I look at my cousins. I look at my nannies and kuros, and I see their faces. And I see the faces of the people I've met that they've said, you've saved my life. And I'm like, okay, this is why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
You know?
And it means you also have to expose your vulnerability, right?
Yes.
Which,
and I'm like,
and you've done that.
Yeah. Because there's so many times, even when I did this documentary, when I had cancer, I was just like, people like, watch people, speculations turn into facts. I've had everything said about me. I was like, come for me. What else?
What's the weirdest, the most out there thing that people said at that time about you?
I don't think anything's out there. Just that I'm a crack addict. I need to be boycotted. Of course, stands and drugs. Look what kind of disgusting mess he is. Yeah, he's been on drugs for years. Or just like everything. They're like, what a pathetic excuse of a human. Like, he should die, blah, blah. Like, I've had everything.
Oh, hang on. They were saying, so you had cancer, and that's what they were saying. They were saying you were manipulating. Is that what they were kind of inferring? That you were manipulating, you had cancer when in actual fact?
No. They were saying they didn't even know I had cancer. They were just assuming.
They were just assuming that was...
Yeah. So assumptions turned into facts. And it turned into literally I was losing ambassadorship roles and everything like that. And I, honest to God, my whānau were so hurt and cut. And I was like, just... Kia tau, te rani Māori.
But how do you do that? Like, I know...
Because I knew the truth was going to come out.
Yeah, but it is something that we always say, kia tau te rani Māori, just kia mohi o koe ki a koe anō. But how do you... I mean, you have to kind of have a pretty strong backbone to deal with that, to lose ambassadorships for stuff that you, I'm sure, were committed to and really involved in, right? Yeah. So how do you wipe it off and go, okay, we're all good?
I think I just learned early just that, people are going to say what they're going to say no matter how well you paint a picture. They will just say you painted a perfect picture. They will go to the one little hair that was on the corner. And it's like, well, if you see the hair, well, kai a koe. It's up to you, mate, bro. But I just think I've just built that thickness. And it doesn't mean that I don't get hurt sometimes or offended or that it doesn't affect me sometimes. Of course it does. I'm a human being. I get affected by stuff. But I remember my youth pastor told me that one of the greatest things, and I struggle with this sometimes because I actually like getting offended sometimes, sometimes I got time to go in for somebody. It's that little stand that is all we grew up fighting. And he goes, you know what, Roto, he goes, offence is taken, it's not given. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, it's up to you to decide if you're going to get offended or not. I was like, it's up to me. So I'm like, do I feel like getting hurt? Do I feel like getting offended? They didn't pay my bills. I don't even know them. I've never seen their face. So why should it affect me? So I think just build up that, that tough backbone. I've got a staunch whānau. I'm just so glad that I grew up being called everything under the sun anyway. So I'm just like, okay, well, I've already experienced that, got hidings for it, got told this and that. I was like, what else you got? So for me, it's I'm all good with that. But just even having, to say the documentary, going back to that, it's, I know that it's going to be exposing, but because of that, I knew that it was going to help people. Yeah. It was going to help people. I got this message from this fella. He goes, oh, hey, bro, I'm blah, blah, blah. My wife watched your documentary and she said to watch it, so we watched it and we always felt something was wrong in our family. Anyway, we went and got tested, we had the same gene, and me and my two sisters got our stomachs out, and he goes, because of you, we're actually alive because we would have been dead too. And I was like, that right there, the one. I don't go for the multitudes, the thousands, the millions. I go for the one. When I did a show in Christchurch, and this fella came to go and get a ticket, couldn't get a ticket, they were sold out. He walked out and this lady just like, I have a spare ticket, would you like a ticket? He didn't look around going, can I have a ticket? She just saw him and gave it to him, came to the show. He came to meet me after and I was doing signing. He goes, bro, I walked in here tonight. This was my last call. I was like, I'm going to go. If I don't get a ticket, whatever, okay, I'm going to go and kill myself. He goes, I came in here and you saved my life tonight. Wow. Another time, a mother walked in after signing and she was crying and she goes, my son is the same age as you and he's been through the same thing. I'm a single mother of 10 kids. He went through exactly the same as you. He was going to kill himself and he's heard you talked about your abuse and how you had overcome and that you are so much more than what your situations were. He goes, my son is alive because of you. Like, this is like a reoccurring thing. This has happened for years. These people come to me and these people, little old me, knowing even like I could be so stuffed up in my head, but still my purpose remains. Doesn't matter what season I'm going through, what I'm feeling, that God will still use me to do these things. And even then I'm reminded and I get saved by saving somebody. Does that make sense? Yeah. My purpose is like, it saves me. It reminds me that I'm actually so much more than my current situation or my season at the time, that my purpose still remains and I'm like far out. It's a trippy thing. It's like my purpose saves me as well because I'm reminded when someone gets saved or somebody's changed from that or like, yeah.
Yeah. No.
So that's why I get vulnerable. That's why I let it out, and I remember because my purpose is so much more than criticism, than the loss of ambassadorships and money. I was just like, man, I saved one person.
Keep the focus, yeah.
Yeah.
Keep the focus on the mission. What has it been like trying to be an advocate like that in Australia with an Indigenous community? When we talk about our intergenerational trauma, with all that has happened with Indigenous populations and communities in Australia, have you been as involved there? Have you been advocating the same way over there? And what has that been like? Because look, I'll be honest, I've got whānau in Australia, and some of the things they say about the Aborigines, I look at them sometimes going, you're Māori skin, you're not Māori. The way you talk about the Aboriginal community over there is, it's appalling. It's appalling, right? So talk to me a little bit about your experience with other Indigenous communities, not just Māori Pacifica and Aotearoa, but particularly in Australia because you've been there for a long time. And what was that like, and how have you worked with Indigenous communities?
Well, I grew up with, both in Aotearoa and Australia. And so we grew up in a lot of communities where a lot of Aboriginal people were. And so my best mates were Aboriginal. And we went to the youth group that I said we went to. It was the church is called Gangala Church, and it was an Aboriginal church, predominantly First Nation, Australian, Māori, Fijian, Pacifica, Pākehā, and I was so blown away. It was the most beautiful thing I ever stepped into at 16 years old. And so I ended up going to Bible college, and we would go around to all the, because their mission statement was to rise up the next generation of Indigenous leaders to speak, Indigenous leaders that love Jesus, that are here to, for the communities. So we would go on these missions you go out to all the missions. It's basically these areas that Aboriginal people were forced into when, the stolen generation, they were just kind of just piled up into these, like in America, the Native Americans, reservations, the same sort of thing. These communities, and they're displaced in their own whenua, on their own whenua. That blows my mind. We have our issues, but we will never understand what it's like to be Native American and Aboriginal, First Nation, Australian. And so I've always had a heart and a passion for Indigenous people, like katoa, but being in there, I just remember thinking, they are us. They make food like us. They are like us. Their community like us. Their arohas like us. Their ways are us. They're us. How have I been seeing, because we've only seen through the lens of, especially if you're in Aotearoa, even Australia, you only see through the lens of old white Australia TV. That's what you see. They're filthy dogs. They're alcoholics and stuff like that. I was like, man, alcoholism does not have a culture. It does not have a colour. Like all these things that they're saying, they're just saying, this is all Aboriginal people are. In the streets, I was like, imagine you still being alive, and in the 60s, you went from fauna, a plant, an animal, to a human being, and you're still alive now. You tell me now, would you be an alcoholic? Do you think that you'd just be living life and living this privileged life? Hell no. I was like, you were still living the first generation of trauma, like of absolute, like of colonization. Us, it's a long time ago now. I don't know. I wasn't alive when all that stuff was happening. I'm privileged. I'm born into a privileged life, even though we have our issues and our problems. They are living like I've got aunties and uncles who are Aboriginal, and like, you know, my nannies and stuff like that. They're telling me about when they were stolen.
Firsthand.
They're telling me about when their kids were getting stolen, and they were adults. I'm like, I can't even. I couldn't even fathom like what that feeling is, and yet they're just still amazing. They're still beautiful. That's the oldest culture in the world. We have so much to learn from them. Like their rongoa, their ways, their history. It is, honest to God, so beautiful. And like, yeah, just being able to be even just a small part of just being an advocate for them, for us, is like, it's an honour rather than like, oh, look what I'm doing. It's an honour to be able to stand for our brothers and sisters over there, and they deserve it. They deserve our voices. They deserve my platform. Our people deserve this platform. They deserve to be heard. They deserve to be reconciled to their land, to their families, and it's the same thing over here. It's not about we own the land. We are the land. Like, they're displaced. They're mamai. They're sick because they're not even in their own whenua. Even as a little kid, I felt displaced, and I felt moke, and I felt lost. I like everything that, even as a little kid, that when I missed home, I missed my marae. I used to dream about it as a little kid. We moved over to Aussie when I was 4. I used to dream about waking up on my marae and climbing my hill. Mm-hmm. We came back from my koro's tani, and it was the first time coming back, and I was 8 years old. I woke up at about 5 in the morning. I walked out and looked at my hill, and I walked up and I just stared out. I was like, I'm 8 years old. Like, that's weird, but I used to feel like that yearning for home, that yearning for breathing my air, that yearning for the trees, to be touching the trees, and the yearning for the earth, like and it's the same thing. We're so spiritually like awake, like, you know, connected, that we're so connected to our whenua. Anything that happens, it hurts. And when you're displaced and you're like away, you feel hurt. Like, I put up the video of our marae, and I just saw all my whānau. They were just like, "Whā, man, I'm bawling my eyes. I miss home. I got this yearning. We want to come home." With everything that's been happening, there's no better place than being home. Especially here in Aotearoa, we're in the best place in the world. So yeah, being a part of that, I love being it, and I love learning more. So the more I learn, the more I'm educated, the more I can do. Yeah. You know?
What do you say to people who will watch this kōrero? They wouldn't have seen this kind of, for one of a better way of putting it, this passionate advocacy that you are upholding, promoting, espousing today. They only know the Stan Walker they know from the videos. They only know the Stan Walker they know from the music, right? So what do you say to those people who are big fans of Stan Walker, we've been calling Stan Walker Waho, who hear this and go, this is not the Stan Walker I know. I don't know if I'm down with this. You know, they are the people who buy your music, who watch your videos, you know, who do the clicks, who go on YouTube, all that kind of stuff. What do you say to those people who potentially are watching this, both in New Zealand and Australia, or anywhere in the world, fans of yours across the world? What do you say to them?
I mean, if you're here for just the music and the photos, go te pai. But there's so much more to every photo, to every song, to every lyric, to everything that I wear, to everything that I am. I'm not saying that I don't want everybody to love me. I don't care for people to love me. I'd rather people's respect more than their love or their praise. You don't have to like me at all, but respect where I've come from, what I've come from to where I'm at now. It's not like accolades or anything like that, but and just be open to like, you know, this is what I'm about. This is why I do what I do.
Okay. Well, what about, are you apprehensive or concerned about the impacts of this kind of advocacy, passionate advocacy, that we've seen internationally, yes, in different contexts, but particularly in places like America? Colin Kaepernick, very much a passionate advocate for rights and interests of the black communities in America, and look at the impacts that happened to him. Still hasn't come back into the NFL. So does it concern you? Does it make you anxious? Do you have some worries about what might happen with you and your Stan Walker Waho musical life, given this passionate advocacy that you are talking about now?
I'm nervous.
Because there are impacts.
I'm nervous because I feel like I'm about to step into a place where it might head to there. But that's why I'm like so thankful. I know who I am, and I've got the most incredible support network. I'm happy as, regardless of like, you know, where people buy my music, I know where I'm heading. I'm not going to end up in a gutter. I get nervous, but I have to. I feel fully compelled to. I need to, because when I, like, going back to, like, you know, seeing my nephews and nieces, they deserve my small sacrifice. They deserve everything, and they need, I need to do it because that's, I want to...
Come what, mate.
Yes.
Come what, mate.
And like, you know, there's, you know, what's that, whakatauki, hea te mea, what is it now? O te ao, he tanata, that is it. And now it's like I fully can see it now that I'm getting older, and I'm like, you know, I've had a very colourful life, but I've lived the last 12 years have been incredible, and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? I remember Erina Clark.
Oh, yeah.
She was beautiful. Amazing. She said to me when I was doing Idol, and I stayed with her after Idol, lived with her for a bit, she said, to whom much is given, much is required, and it's a verse in the Bible. And I'm like, oh yeah, I should say it. I only just realised what that meant this year. To whom much is given, much is required. And I was just like, I've been given the most incredible gifts, incredible platform, but so much is required of it, to the point that I might have to sacrifice and give up things because I know that it's not about me, even though a lot of times it's about me to myself. But like now I'm like, okay, I'm starting a family. Now I can see, oh, it's not about me. It's so much more. And I'm like, far, when I see my niece that she jumped on the Reo Māori version of Bigger, I'm like, oh, I can't be, Tua. And I was just like, oh, you know, I'm weird, like I should be so excited about the release date. And came out, I was like, yo. And then I was playing the song came on, and she started, you know, her bit come up, and I was just like, fuck.
Beautiful.
I was like, that's why it's not about me. Yeah. It's about her. It's about them. And so...
No offence, but she might actually be the star.
Oh, she's the star. Little blooming egg. Every time I've listened to it about 30 times, I've cried every time. Yeah. And I was like, that is my reminder. That's my purpose right there. So I know things are gonna get a little bit hot. Yeah. Like I think just coming into this new season and with where the world's at, you know, and I'm prepared. Obviously, you're never truly prepared because we don't know what's going to happen, but...
Yeah, I guess the other thing that I wonder about, and I'll respond to your biblical quote with another well-known quote, which is, heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yes.
And I know you would have thought this through, but, you know, it is going to be, maybe not, but I just sense that, you know, you've got your support mechanisms as you go through this. Yeah. But yeah, it will get heavy, and it's important to know that you've got those support mechanisms when it does get heavy.
Yeah. I just got to remind myself not to be the old me and... Sometimes I just, it just comes out. It's just, I'm quick.
Do you think that this also means that you'll make potentially conscious decisions around, for example, and I love it when you and even Jessica Mauboy, you know, you come out and you do national anthems at sports events and stuff like this, and we love that. But knowing what we know and knowing that there are things that we have to work on together within nations, and particularly advocate for rights and interests of Indigenous peoples across the world, have you considered the contention about getting up at a national sporting event or other events and singing national anthems when you know justice hasn't been upheld, rights and interests haven't been respected, particularly in Aotearoa, but also for Indigenous people across the world? Is that something that you've thought about?
Oh, 100%. The thing is, with me, once I learn something, once I know something, I can't unlearn, unsee, unknow it. And I have to live with that. I'm like, I was like, what, you have to tell me? Now I have to act on it, or I have to research or learn more. For me, I'm like, I know nothing. And the older I get, the more I know nothing. So I'm trying to learn as much as I can because I want to be about it. I don't want to just come with an opinion. Everybody's got an opinion. Opinions are free, but they're all garks. It's just an opinion. I want to come with facts. I want to know things. So for this thing, for say an anthem, I've already made it very clear on certain things that I can't do that. I was like, I will not support that. Now I know I need to be tūturu ki te kaupapa.
Wow. Yeah. What was the response like? Because you have been approached to do things and you've started turning them down, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I've turned a lot of things down, even to the point where I can't go to events if somebody's going to be speaking and I don't agree with their things because I will say something. And so I've got an amazing team that guard me. They're like, oh, no, we won't let you go there. I was like, yeah, thank you. Everything, because I can't help it. I have to, if I see an injustice or something that has, that people just injustice, whether it be way back in the ra or now, I have to say something. You have to, otherwise you're part of the problem. I might not get it right all the time. To be honest, I probably get it wrong every single time, but I have to do something. And I think that's why I love partnering up and hanging with people who know stuff so they can educate me. So I know when I'm going in with all my passion, with all the blooming ihi and everything, that I'm actually having an educated, factual, or as much passionate kōrero or statement or whatever. And I've just I never knew anything about climate change. I was like, what the hell is that global warming? I was like, I don't even know what that means. Well, ice is melting, it's getting colder. How does that make sense? I was living in Raro between Rarotona and here for 2 years, and I learnt about climate change. And then I became an advocate for climate change, not so that I can go, oh, guys, I'm here saving the world. It was me going on a journey to learn more and get educated so that I can teach people along the way, this is what I'm learning. And I'm blown away. I can't unsee that. I can't unlearn that. I can't unexperience the experiences that I've experienced and heard the experiences of people and seen firsthand that our islands are getting washed away. They're at the forefront of the battle of climate change. So my conscious changes that I've made is I haven't bought a plastic bottle for a year. And for me, that's a big thing because I don't even think twice. If I'm getting something, it's in a bottle, it's in a plastic bottle. Just little conscious things that I try and make, if I've learnt it or if I know it, I can't unknow it. I've got a bro, Damien Nikora. He's an incredible photographer, one of the best in New Zealand, if not the best. He's been doing this, a lot of things with ethical living and ethical sustainability. And I was like, oh, yo, bro, I'm doing this. Then he told me about the certain brands that are unethical, but they talk about being ethical. And I'm like, oh, no, you shouldn't have told me. I shocked it. And now I'm like, okay. And so I'm in a point where I'm making new merch. I was like, we did it this way, but how is that benefiting? Not that I'm I'm Captain Planet and all this stuff, because I'm fully not. There's so much stuff that I do that's bad, but I'm learning and I'm still learning and I'm going to be forever learning. And if I can take people on the journey with me, with that, if I can, and I don't care, people are going to disagree with me and they're going to put me down, they're going to go, oh, like, I got my whānau, they go, yeah, shut up, bro. What are you doing? You think you're saving the planet? I was like, well, you look at a beach, you see all the sand, you pick up 1 grain of sand, what is that? But altogether, if you're playing your part, you become the whole beach. I was just like, I'm one of those grains of sand that's trying to do something in my little way, where people agree with it or not, or look at me insignificant. I am significant because I'm every one of part of those, you know, my purpose. I still have my purpose. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that I've changed and a lot of things that I didn't know and a lot of things that I'm still doing and still learning and changing that, and that may be a bit of a cut on the old bank on my spending and stuff like that. But engari kai, te pai.
Thank you. Thank you for this time. What I love is that we only mentioned Australian Idol once. I think we mentioned Beyoncé once, and we mentioned your niece and nephews. I don't know how many times. I think that's awesome. That's awesome. Nā reira, mā te atu koe manaaki. Kia kaha I roto I o mahi ahoa. Kia kaha tō I roto I ngā mahi haumaru I tō whānau. Nō reira, tēnā koe. Thank you so much for being a part of Indigenous.
Thank you. Kia ora.